Okay, so we're gonna wrap up talking about guilt. About 2 weeks ago, Dylan brought a message about guilt, kind of talking about his experience with guilt and what happens. But this week, we're gonna wrap up that series of guilt, and we're gonna kind of confront our guilt head on. We're gonna kind of talk about why we still feel guilt, and basically kind of like that. So we're gonna just kind of jump right into it. So I was kind of thinking about why we feel guilty. Like, what are some things we feel guilty about? Like, why is it something, like, why do we feel this guilt? And a lot of times we feel guilt because we can't forgive ourselves. Usually we have guilt because you can't forgive yourself. You don't have room for that forgiveness in your heart. And so you go ahead and you put up walls. You put up something so that you don't get something like that again. If you guys remember when we were talking about, we did our no strings attached shoes whenever we didn't have Bible study, we posted a video and we all were able to watch it and stuff like that. We were talking about the girl that was condemned, right? The girl that was at the feet of Jesus after she was condemned by the Pharisees and people, and everyone wanted to throw rocks at her. And we said that she was shamed, but when she was shamed, she was sent to the forgiver, and when she was sent to the forgiver, she got forgiveness. But today I just want to focus on one thing. I want to focus on how she was shamed. You see, our guilt tends to come from our regret. You know, the regret you have of maybe you feel like it's your fault because your parents are going through that divorce. Maybe you feel that guilt because you feel like it's your fault that you stepped away from that friendship, and so now that person that you stepped away with is now cutting themselves, and you feel like it's your fault because they're not going through that friendship. And so you start feeling this guilt, you start feeling all this kind of stuff, and you can do certain things in your guilt. A lot of us we try to get our guilt, we just shove it down. We just kind of keep it down in us. We don't want to let the guilt go. We don't want the guilt to come out. We don't want people to notice that we're feeling guilty because we want to make it look like it's all good, it's all fine, everything. But what happens is that guilt becomes baggage in your life. It becomes a weight in your life, and pretty soon it will go and it will start weighing you down, and you will not be able to see purpose. You will lose friends. You will lose people in your life because of the guilt, because you don't want to let anyone in. You don't want to feel that guilt again. You don't want to have something happen again. So you keep it down, you try and put up walls. And so about I think it was like 3 weeks ago, my friends, I have 2 friends, a bunch. Some of them are trust me enough to let me know what's going on in their lives. And so they're telling me about what's happening. And I asked them, they're getting really frustrated, their day is just awful, their week is going awfully. And I asked them, I said, well, have you been praying? They said, yeah, I've been praying. I said, okay, well, have you been reading the Bible? They said, yeah, I read the Bible. I said, okay, well, did you worship? And they thought about it for a second. They said, yeah, I worship. I said, okay, cool. And so I'm thinking about it real quick, and I say, all right, but were you vulnerable in your worship? Were you vulnerable in your word? Were you vulnerable when you were praying? Were you vulnerable whenever you were reading the word and you were praying to God? The response was no. And I realized that we can all go read a Bible, we can all go read the Bible, stuff like that. When you are not truthful about what's going on in your life, when you don't speak to God, when you don't speak on what's happening in your life, those walls become even harder because you don't really realize, you're not really allowing those walls to come down, you're not allowing them in. So if you cannot speak on what's happening in the situation, how do you expect for someone to feel that situation? You can't, there's a reason why whenever you get hurt, you feel pain. So you're able to, know what's happening. If your body has sensory nerve things, I don't know medical science, but your body has, it tells you when something's going on, right? It lets you know that, hey, there's pain happening in this area. You just scraped your knee. Oh no, there's pain in this area. It needs to get fixed. You need to take the stuff to fix it. And so I feel like a lot of us, we just keep up those walls. We don't let anyone in. We just say, you know what? I don't want people to know what's happening in my life, It'll heal over time because because I guess that's how everything works. But if we look at John 11:44, we're talking about Lazarus. And what happens is Lazarus is coming up from the dead, and Jesus says this. He says, the man that had been dead came out, and his hands and feet were wrapped with strips of burial clothes and cloth covered in his face. We'll stop there. And so what happens? So what happens is, Lazarus is in a tomb. He has the walls up in a tomb, and so he's covered. So hold that up. Hold that up. So hold that up. There you go. So Lazarus is behind this tomb, right? And Jesus says, "All right, come out, Lazarus." So Lazarus comes out, and the thing drops. But what happens is he has his burial clothes on. He has these things so attached. I just need to talk about that. He still has these things attached to him. He still has this stuff attached to him. This is what Jesus says. He says tells the people to go untie him. It never says, all right, Lazarus, you can take off your burial clothes yourself, just like that. No, Jesus says, all right, he tells other people to go and untie him. He didn't say you have to do it by yourself. And this is what I realized. A lot of times we try to solve our problems by ourselves. We don't let anyone in, so we put up those walls to not allow anyone in, because we don't want to seem weak. We don't want to seem not as strong, I guess. And so I want to show you a few things. I want to be kind of. I saw this guy said it's called HOT, humble, open, and transparent. This is from a guy named Pastor Mike Todd. I want to be 100% hot with y'all, be humble, open, and transparent with y'all. I want to talk to you guys about my guilt. Back in COVID, we all got something from COVID. We all found stuff in COVID. I found stuff in COVID as well. In COVID, I found pornography. I found pornography during COVID. And so during COVID, that was something that I struggled with. And through pornography and through that, I felt alone. And when I was alone, I felt depressed. And so over time, when I struggled with that, I felt guilty. And I couldn't look at anyone the same. I felt guilty. But this is what I love. This is what I love about people. There's a verse in the Bible we've been talking about for a long time, for about 2 weeks, and it says, when you go ahead and confess to one another, let them know what is going on in your life, and they can pray for you. They can help you. And so I stumbled upon that verse in my struggle with pornography, and I go up and I find something called an accountability partner. So what those are people that will check on you during any point in time. And I'm not talking about like a friend, I'm talking about someone that is older, is wiser, and has more wisdom with you. So what they do is they check in on you on the times that you would be hurting. But this is the fun part about an accountability partner. You have to be 100% hot with them, humble, open, and transparent. You have to be 100% honest with them. Because as I learned this in the beginning, is when you're not honest, you still carry weight. Because now you're kind of getting rid of that little weight, but now you're like, oh, it's easier to lift this weight now. I don't have to tell them about this other part. When you have a partner like that, you need to tell them everything that's going on. And I'm not talking about what's happening in your life. I'm talking about what happens behind your room with the door closed at 12 a.m. when your parents are asleep. I'm talking about what happens when no one else is in the house and it's just you in the house. I'm talking about the search history. I'm talking about what you've been doing with that behind closed doors. Because I'm talking about that stuff that no one else knows about but you. Because I can tell you this now, a lot of your guilt is fueled through your dishonesty. Because now you're not being honest about what's happening in your life, so now you start feeling like it's your fault. You start feeling like it's your fault for your parents' divorce because you feel like, oh, well, because they got a divorce. Maybe it's because of me. Maybe it's because of my porn addiction. Maybe it's because of what I've been doing late at night. Maybe it's about where I've been going late at night. Maybe that's why my parents don't want to be with me. Maybe that's why my parents don't want to be with each other, because of me. And so now when you do that, you put up walls. But the only way, and I can tell you this right now, the only way that you can really get rid of those walls, and you can actually be open and you can actually get those walls to soften, is when you're honest, when you're humble, when you're open, when you are allowing other people in your life. Because you can carry the grave clothes with you. You can keep it with you, and you can try and carry it alone. And you can try and take it off. I can take some of the grave clothes off, but it's still dragging behind me. It's still with me. Because in that verse we saw that Jesus didn't tell Lazarus to take off the grave clothes, but he told other people to remove his grave clothes. He didn't say for Lazarus to take them off, he said other people. So if Lazarus can't take off his own grave clothes, why do we think we can still take stuff off like that? Why do you think we can still handle the addiction on our own? Why do we feel like we can still handle the guilt by ourselves? And I'm so adamant about being vulnerable because I wasn't vulnerable. I put walls up, and now I've lost multiple friends. I have lost things that I didn't want. I've lost a lot without being humble or without being open. With keeping those walls up, without that vulnerability, you'll lose in the end. You may think now, oh yeah, it's fine now because it's not affecting me now. but later in life it will. And I'm not trying to endorse the teachers or anything. I'm not trying to sound like that teacher's pet or whatever. But the same thing applies whenever you think that the things that you're hiding in your iPad they won't figure out, or maybe they haven't figured out what you've done now, but maybe you think, well, since they haven't figured it out now, they won't figure it out later. They will figure it out later. The same thing goes with it. You see, your sin. What's the verse? There's a verse that says this. It says, every sin will come to light. All sin will come to light. Whatever is happening will come to light. The addiction will come to light. But in order to really get rid of that addiction, is to be humble. It's to be open. It's to let down those walls. And so I kind of want to help you guys in the next 3 weeks with letting down the walls, because I feel like a lot of times, especially in middle school, and I'm going to kind of gear over to the guys just a little bit, but I can tell you this 100%, most guys deal with pornography, but it's also growing with women too. I can tell you 100% it is growing with women because I've seen statistics. I've seen statistics with guys, pornography is growing with guys. I've seen statistics where guys are more open to putting up walls and not being vulnerable because they don't want to show that they are susceptible to other things. For the next 3 weeks, after this, we're going to start a new series called Fall. We're going to talk about identity. We are going to talk about curses, family curses, or we can say this, family curses. We can talk about that, and then we're going to talk about how to actually have a real relationship with someone. Because a real relationship with someone, a real relationship with a friend isn't, oh, you've done this, and now you can't tell them about your porn addiction. You can't tell them about that addiction, that guilt you have, because maybe they'll leave you. But I can tell you this now, that if a friend leaves you because of that, they won't leave you. So we're going to start a new series next week called Fall. Now, we're going to talk about identity. We're going to talk about generational curses, and then we're going to talk about making new godly relationships, because I feel like, especially in middle school, we need to know this. And then we have some few things planned in. But I want y'all to do this. When y'all get home, I don't know if y'all struggle with something like this, but when y'all get home, I want you to write down everything you're feeling guilty about. I want the addiction. I don't care what it is. I want you to write down your addiction. I don't want you to write down maybe something you're feeling upset about, maybe something you can't even share with your own friends because you feel like that it's too much for them. I want you to write it all down. And I want all y'all to do this. Even if you don't think that you have anything like this, I still want you to try it today. I want you to open up the Bible, and I want you to ask God to speak to you. I want you to go into about 30 minutes of worship and just ask God to speak to you through this. And I want you to write it all down. Then what I want you to do is once you're finished, I want you to rip it all up. I want you to rip it all up, and I want you to throw it in the trash. And I want you to realize that addiction, that guilt, that pain cannot hold on to you. It cannot hold on to you. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go and I want you to find someone. And I want you to tell them what is going on in your life. Because you are only as strong as you are truthful. You are only as strong as you are vulnerable. Now, I want you to ask someone that's actually trustworthy. I don't want you to go up to maybe your best friend and be like, oh, like that best. I don't want you to go up to that best friend that's continuously talking bad about you behind your back. I can tell you 100% there are a few teachers that I would talk to about whatever I'm going through. Like, I know some of us are really good with Mr. Titus. Guys, go to Mr. Titus. I can tell you that I'm pretty sure he's down for something like that. If you're feeling guilty about this, guys, go to a guy. Girls, go to a girl. Don't go to someone different gender, because that's not gonna work as well. We don't want that kind of stuff to happen. But I want you to get vulnerable. I want you to write down what's happening. I want you to rip it up, and I want you to go to someone about it. All right? All right, cool. Let's pray. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for what you've blessed us with. Lord, I pray for the addiction. I pray for the guilt. Lord, I thank you for this time we get to have together. Lord, I pray that as we go through our week, Lord, I pray that we get vulnerable in our worship. Lord, I pray that we write down anything we're feeling guilty about, all the addiction. I pray that we write down everything that could be bothering us right now, Lord. Lord, I pray we write down the pain. I pray that we write down the addiction, the guilt, whatever we're feeling. And I pray that you speak to us through that. Lord, I pray that once you speak to us through that, you send people our way. You send people their way that can guide them, that can guide them and help them through this addiction, help them through this guilt. Lord, I thank you for all you bless us with, and I thank you for what you will continue to bless us with. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.